Hello, Mana TV International viewers. Welcome back to yet another exciting session on our series, Healthy Life the Vegan Way. I'm your host, Kalindi. Healthy Life the Vegan Way is a series in collaboration with World Vegan Vision. The World Vegan Vision is a not-for-profit organization whose mission is to empower you to be healthy, to be kind, to be vegan, and to be human. Today, we are back with our eminent guests, Dr. Shainik Shah and Dr. Moez Kasubai, and we also will be introducing a special guest today. For those who are new, Dr. Shah is a humanitarian, he's an advocate of veganism, and he's a practicing internal medicine physician for over 35 years. And of course, he has been vegan for over 20 plus years. He's a firm believer and a follower of whole food plant-based diet. He strongly recommends a healthy lifestyle to prevent, reverse, or manage disease using whole food plant-based diet as a tool. Our next guest, Dr. Moez Kasubai, as you all know, is an associate chair of medicine in an academic medical center. He has passionate interest in plant-based diet and plant-based nutrition, especially to reverse chronic diseases. He's a physician advisor and to a lot of healthcare technology companies and another advocate for plant-based diet. And today, our special guest, I'll be introducing Mr. Avinash Kapchi. He is a passionate follower of veganism. He, in fact, calls himself an armchair activist. By training, Avinashji is an industrial chemist and also an IT professional. After hearing about benefits of plant-based diet, he went a step further to learn more about it. And he, in fact, got a certification in whole food plant-based diet from Colin Campbell Center of Nutritional Studies. He has been a very strong volunteer at World Vegan Vision, and his skills, whether his activism or whether his IT skills have incredibly helped World Vegan Vision. So I like to call him master of all trades. Welcome, Avinashji, on the show.
Thank you.
So viewers, so far we have presented to you the numerous benefits of veganism. And after hearing so many benefits, now, you have a lot of questions and, very natural. It's very, you're inquisitive about, okay, you guys have told us so many benefits. Now, is there anything else that you need to know? Or there are so many questions that arise from, okay, whether this is everything that you're saying is going to work for my body? Is it healthy? What is it? Am I going to, not have enough nutrition, et cetera, et cetera. So today, show is dedicated on I like to call it the myth busters of veganism. So we are going to tackle a few questions one after another, and hopefully that will help you, that will help you to be more of an informed consumer or informed vegan. So let's start. We're hoping that it will clarify some of your doubts. So let's start with number one question. And, a lot of people think veganism and vegetarianism are the same. So, Dr. Shah, can we answer that question? Or can we help differentiate?
I think that the majority of the people who always I talk to in my practice that, okay, you should start the vegan. He says, Doc, I don't eat any meat. They don't understand, and maybe unintentionally, they're leaving out the dairy products, eggs and cheese and butter and milk and ghee and all those things, because that's where majority of the diseases are also coming out of. In fact, they found out that the people who were, and in fact, in my own practice, I found out that people are vegetarian. Why are they still getting heart attacks? Why are they still becoming diabetic? So all these questions always bothered me, and I kept on searching myself. And little by little, I gravitated towards the dairy products because dairy is very high in cholesterol and has been linked with cholesterol, of course, but on top of that, blood sugars and elevations and diabetes and all those things we had talked in the past. So yes, there is a huge difference between vegetarianism and veganism. We really want a perfected diet, and that will not be perfected until you become vegan. So vegetarians, be aware, because there are still high risk for heart attacks diabetics, hypertension, strokes, all these things are still happening to the vegetarian. In fact, where we come from in India, a lot of people are vegetarian. Still, I see the heart disease is so rampant. So that's not where the buck stops. The buck has to stop when all the animal products have to stop. What do you say, Moise?
I agree, Dr. Shah, very much. And there's another difference also between veganism and what you follow, which is a whole food plant-based diet, where you also take out the oil out of it really there. For instance, veganism could be also fries and Coke. Now, Coke or Coke, for instance, has sugar inside. Fries are potatoes, but they are deep fried. There's oil inside that can cause damage too. So further advancement in veganism is whole food plant-based, where you eliminate the oil, eliminate the sugar as much as you can.
I agree. What's your experience about?
My observation is that veganism and vegetarianism are not as close as non-vegetarianism and vegetarianism is, because the way we produce the so-called vegetarian foods, which is eggs and dairy, the products resemble more like meat. In fact, milk is called liquid beef now, the way we are producing dairy. And I also believed at one point that there was no harm in eating eggs because there was no life in them. But when I found out that all the male chicks are killed at the age of 1 or 2 days, it became quickly apparent that vegetarian food is no longer acceptable. And there are many religions. For example, Seventh-day Adventist, Christian religion, Hindu, many sects of Hindu religion, they all believe that being a vegetarian is good enough, but that doesn't hold true anymore. So veganism is the only solution.
Great. So now that we know the difference between veganism and vegetarianism, let's move on to the nutrition part. So the next question, when there's a vegan in the room, the question in everyone's head, of course, non-vegans, is where do you get your protein from, right? Do vegans get enough protein? Do plants have protein? Can you build muscle on protein? Without meat, can you build muscle? Can you bulk up on a plant-based diet? So doctors, what do you have to say about that? Dr. Shah, what is your view?
But there is really no shortage of foods on the whole food plant-based side. The beans are very good sources of protein. The soy is there, lentils are there, and even nuts have protein, even leafy vegetables, spinach and all that have various amount of proteins. 1 cup of black beans can give you 15 grams of protein, and 1 egg is 6 grams of protein. So really people think that if they're eating eggs for protein, it's really not enough protein to really say that that's the main source of protein. In fact, I had a one patient, very interesting story. She's a nun, a Catholic nun, and she went back to India and she attended one of those nature clinics and things like that. And because she used to have a high cholesterol, diabetes, and she really stayed there almost a month, and she brought everything back to normal. She stopped all her medication. I was so pleased. And then we did another blood test a couple of months later, and suddenly her cholesterol started going up. I said, "Sister, what happened here?" He says, "No, nothing. But when I sit down for breakfast with other nuns, they say you're not eating really enough protein. So you know what? You should start eating eggs." So she started eating eggs. Not really. I said, "What were you doing before that, though?" He says, "I was eating mung, a cup of mung." I said, I showed her on the Google. I said, mung has 15 grams of protein and eggs have 6 grams of protein. Maybe you should go and tell the other nuns to start eating mung rather than eggs. So there are a lot of misbelief that there is not enough protein in the whole food plant-based diet, which is not true. The only thing you have to be careful is you have to have a variety of different beans and lentils. That's why God has created all these variations. So we need to try that so we can get enough amino acids and all that. So quinoa is high in protein. So a lot of things are available. Even they came with their parents, and like father and son teams, they were taking excessive protein powders and all that. And suddenly their creatinine and kidney function started deteriorating. So you really have to be careful in going all the way in gung-ho into protein powders and things like that. So.
And the notion that people eat meat or not animal-based foods for protein itself is a myth, because not everybody, hardly anybody is a bodybuilder or an athlete. People are mostly sedentary nowadays. So most people eat animal-based foods because there is no other choice in the food system developed by our government, or because of the taste. Many of them are for taste, and the poor people are because there is nothing else available. So, and also in nature, God didn't make, or nature didn't make foods depending on like for each macronutrient, like this is for starch and this is for protein or this is for fat. Every food has everything in different proportion. So eating meat or protein is also not, I mean, it also contains a lot of like 30-40% fat too, and you are indirectly eating
all saturated fat.
So that's not good either.
Have been featured as plant-based. They have gone up taken a plant-based
Yeah.
diet, right? So even more reason, to believe.
Yeah, a lot
that
of athletes in
plant-based diet
Olympics
has it
and a
all.
lot of basketball teams and football teams are going vegan. They ask their coaches, he says, "Coach, what's the best diet?" They says, "Well, go plant-based diet." And they became lean and mean, and their performance in the sports got really better. They started scoring better. So it's true. The whole food plant-based diet is a complete diet.
So the next question, this brings us to the next question, dairy, which, most of the people associate dairy with having strong bones, or essential for, especially like, with an Indian diet, ghee, which is a form of dairy, essential for lubricating joints, the belief that I won't get enough calcium, not enough vitamin D without taking dairy. So what do you say, doctors, about that?
Well, I mean, the dairy has become part of our Indian culture is only because at one time we did not have enough grain production. Country was poor. Technologically, we were not that savvy. We were not that advanced, unfortunately. So the kids were starving and they were getting malnourished. And the closest thing to the nutrition was the cow, which was plowing the fields. So they say, all right, well, cow is making the milk. We'll give half to the calf and the other half to our kids. And that's how we survived. That's why we call cows our mother, and rightfully so. But nowadays, you go to any farms, where are the cows? They're all tractors replacing the cows. So really, it has become part of our life, but it's not necessarily. 70% of the world population does not consume milk at all. If you go to China and Vietnam and all those countries, Korea and all that, they drink black tea. There is no tea with the milk.
Right.
So it's really a misnomer. It's just become part of our lifestyle. So that's another story, but it's not necessarily necessary for your development or growth or for the bones. As far as when it comes to ghee, I think Avinash is very passionate about. He says there are no studies like that. It just whatever I read right now, you just accept it and move on. We live in a scientific age. You can't be sticking to something when you have a proof after proof coming that ghee is high in cholesterol and all those things. People getting with the high cholesterols are getting heart attacks. How can we just sit and watch and not do anything about it? We need to grow up. So what do you say, Avinash?
Ayurveda, which people believe in, Vedic traditions, which people believe in. And actually, it's not that people believe in. People just want excuses to justify their taste. And they just hang on to all these ancient scriptures and ancient books, which are based on no scientific evidence at all. And just hand me, and people go by that. There are certain religious sects also who feed the people a lot of dairy, and they call it sattvic food. And then when you ask them, they quote the Vedic method of producing dairy, but actually they are buying dairy from commercial producers. So, we have actually no reason to consume dairy at all in today's times.
I'll just give a historical perspective to this.
Right.
And if you look at it, we human beings have been on this earth for the last 300,000 years, right? And when we started having dairy, 10,000 years ago. So the majority of human time we've been on this earth, we've not been having milk. And what happened 10,000 years ago? Farming came around. Along with farming came cows and came along milk. All the farming was the beginning of civilization, but end of health. Because after that, when we were hunters and gatherers, we were more healthy because we were having better food. When we started farming, we started having the worst food. And that's when, yes, civilization got better, but we got much more ill health, really.
In fact, they had excavated some skeletons, and they found out that a lot of skeletons had cavities in their teeth. because they coincided with the time when the farming started, because farming was done more for starchy foods, the wheat and rice and maize and all those things, right? So carbohydrates actually stick in between your teeth, and the staphylococcal bacteria come to eat that. The end product is acid, and it causes the cavities. So they found out that the skeletons which are excavated before the farming, there were no cavities. So cavities are well designed by us than the farming itself. And yeah, you're right. I mean, people argue that, okay, Krishna, drank milk and ate yogurt and all that. That was 2,500 years back, right? What does he know? But in Gita itself, Krishna says, I was born before I gave this preached Gita to the son, Bhargava. I taught him the Gita. So he is much more ancient than just the one manifestation of Krishna. So we cannot go by that. But the ancient, there were no cows. Cows used to be wild animals. We tamed them. And you go try, getting the milk from a wild cow. You will not exist. She will run you over in no time. Only because we have tamed cows, so we can get away and say, oh, yeah, milk is good for you. Yeah, right. That's why we have to tie the legs of the cows before we milk them, right? So it's really a myth. It's definitely a myth that milk is necessary for you. It's not. 70% of the world does not consume milk.
And just to add,
no animal.
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Avinash.
No animal in the world drinks the milk of another species.
Yes.
No animal in the world drinks the milk of even its own species after it gets teeth.
After 6 months, 1 year. Yes, absolutely. We are the only one who cross the species and go and drink somebody else's mother's milk. It's just ironic. How can we justify that? And for the whole life.
Add that we're also lactose intolerant.
Yes, that's another aspect of that.
75% of Indians are lactose intolerant. You'll end up getting gastricness, flatulence, diarrhea, etc. with that. So why would you have it? I mean, it's bad for your health. It's bad for your digestive system. It's not historically what you should be having. We were not humans because of milk. Milk came much later in our history, really.
Since we keep on giving milk to the children, they actually develop a capacity to digest it by producing lactase enzyme. Like I became vegan for 20 summers. Even if I have one piece of candy, I get a gas. So, which tells me that I have gone back to my physiological state, which I was supposed to be lactose free. And that's how it was. So you really have to be careful because a lot of people have GI symptoms. In fact, a lot of people going to the gastroenterologist, getting endoscopies done and CAT scans done and all that. Before doing that, I would strongly recommend you try stopping the dairy products for a few weeks and see what happens. Many of them may just get better.
This brings us to the next question. A lot of us, most people associate dairy with calcium, and vitamin D. Obviously, if you're not going to eat dairy, people think that where am I going to get my vitamin D? Where am I going to get my calcium? And as vegans, do you have to take all those supplements? Doctors, can you please give us an idea?
Let's clear out one thing for sure, that vitamin D is a fortified vitamin into the milk. Milk does not contain vitamin D at all. So you do not have to drink milk for vitamin D. You can take vitamin D supplements. Yes, vitamin D is manufactured by your skin when exposed to the sun, and especially in the northern hemisphere, like America or Canada or something, the sun is coming at an angle. So even though you feel hot, but it's really coming at an angle, it loses lots of its efficacy when it's trying to filter through the atmosphere. So yes, you don't get to manufacture enough vitamin D, and that is true, but that can be supplemented. It doesn't really have to be taking the milk for that reason. When it comes to the calcium, it's really a no-brainer. If you really look at it in the detail, 1 cup of milk will give you 303 milligrams of calcium. Yes, a glass of milk contains 303 milligrams of calcium. Yes, but studies have shown that only 30% of that is bioavailable for your body. 70% actually goes in your stool, so it does not come in your body. If you compare with a can of beans, say black beans or red kidney beans or something, you get 295 milligrams of calcium, but 50% of that is bioavailable. So that comes out to almost 150 milligrams, so which is a lot more than a glass of milk. So it is a wrong thinking that the milk is a good source of calcium. And of course, like I said, like calcium of the milk comes with cholesterols and hormones and antibiotics and all those things. Beans are just pure calcium and protein and fiber, everything pretty much healthy. So for calcium, you really don't have to rely on the milk. So another thing, like we said, was the vitamin D. Vitamin D has been fortified to the milk. So you really don't have to drink the milk for vitamin D, because we cannot manufacture enough vitamin D in this country. And because we're really not walking around in 0 degree without a shirt on. So we really don't get that much exposure. On top of that, whatever sun comes in comes at an angle. So it really loses a lot of its strength. So by the time it touches our skin, we're not able to produce enough vitamin D. So yes, supplementation may be necessary, but milk does not have to be one of them, because it's really trying, the dairy industry is trying to create an image in your mind that milk is going to make your bones strong, for which you need calcium and vitamin D. Calcium, yes, they have it, but as I explained, it's not that efficacious. But vitamin D is definitely fortified. It's added to the milk. This is only to lure more customers. What do you say, Dr. Moise?
Well, I completely agree with you, Dr. Shah. And don't forget about spinach and broccoli. Any of these greens that we have, there's so much of calcium inside it.
Yes, absolutely.
And as you mentioned, antioxidants, fiber, elements, the magnesium, potassium, everything that you need. Milk comes, as you mentioned, with hormones and all these pesticides and contaminants. Why would you ever want to have that?
Risk of cancer, not to say, and prostate hypertrophy, prostate cancer, who knows? Yeah, right.
Yes, absolutely right.
Right.
And there is the studies about incidences of hip fracture and dairy consumption. So the world's richest countries like Scandinavia, they have very high incidence of hip fracture. And countries like in Africa, where they don't get that much dairy, have very little incidence of hip fracture. So getting calcium from milk and preventing osteoporosis is just a myth.
In fact, I argue with my patients. I said every third woman walking into my practice has osteoporosis. Mm-hmm. This country has one of the highest amount of dairy consumption. How come? If we are consuming so much dairy, how come all these women are getting osteoporosis? Tell me.
Right.
No explanation.
That's true. So, hopefully we have answered the questions or your sort of doubts. Hopefully this has helped clarify that, dairy does not necessarily mean that, dairy is not essential just for vitamin D, calcium, or strong bones. Switching to a plant-based milk or plant-based diet will definitely give you all the supplements, all the nutrition that is needed.
And even the plant-based milks are now, they're fortifying them with the vitamin D also.
They come fortified with vitamin D too. So we hope that we have answered, a few of your questions. Hopefully, I'm sure you have plenty, but at least few main questions we have answered. And if you have any more questions, you can always reach us out through Mana TV. And we can try and answer your questions through them. To all of our viewers, hopefully some of our this discussion has helped you to understand that some of the things that you hear are totally myths. And a whole food plant-based diet has every nutrient that your body needs, and it needs to grow, it needs to thrive. So all in all, a whole food plant-based diet, as it says, it's a whole diet. So I hope you all enjoyed today's show, Healthy Life the Vegan Way, and hope we answered all your queries. Thank you very much. And thank you, doctors. Thank you, Avinash ji.